Hi and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be looking at whether or not having the guards on your DJI Neo 2 is going to make any real difference to the flight times you're going to get from the batteries. I'm also going to be looking at whether or not the frame rate you got on the DJI Neo 2 is going to have any impact, whether or not you're using 1080p or whether or not you're using 4K at 60 frames a second. So the plan is I'm going to try and replicate the flight path as much as I can up and on the beach until the battery is totally exhausted, and then compare the results from that to see exactly what difference the guards make and the frame rate makes. And before I go any further, I'm not sponsored, so if you could do the like, subscribe and the notification bell, that would be absolutely fantastic. So there are a number of different external factors which are going to affect the flight time you're going to get on the DJI Neo 2. First one obviously is going to be the wind, because the heavier the wind, then the more resistance the drone's going to get, the more power it's going to use. But luckily today it's very light winds, so that shouldn't have any effect. Cold can also affect the battery power, so I've tried to keep the batteries as warm as I possibly could inside my jacket, so again that shouldn't have any effect. And finally, the way that you fly the drone, a lot of erratic movement, that can have an effect as well. So I intend to use the cruise control, fly the drone up and back, ascend and descend all under cruise control, so everything's going to be nice and smooth, and try and replicate, as I said, the flight path each time as much as possible. Now, I also run into a few problems doing the tests for reasons which I can't explain, but they'll obviously become obvious as the video goes on. So I won't say too much about that now, but if you run into similar issues, if you could let me know in the comments below, try and work out exactly what's going on with the problems that I encountered. Now, there are a number of ways you can get increased flight time without removing the guards and changing the frame rate. And there's a full video up here on exactly what to do if you want to know more about that. But this video is going to be purely about flying without the guards and the frame rate differences. Now, although the guards only weigh 8 grams, the drone itself weighs 160 grams. So doing the math, it means that the guards actually weigh 5% of the drone weight. And that probably will have a bit of difference, which we'll go through in a minute. But with that said, let's crack on with the video. So I'm going to be doing 4 runs in total, 2 with the guards on, 2 with the guards off. I'm also going to be doing 2 of the runs in 1080p at 30 frames a second, and the other 2 at 4K at 60 frames a second, just so I can see if having the guards on and off, and also whether or not the frame rate does make a difference to the amount of battery time and flight time you're going to get when you're using the DJI Neo 2. I'm also going to try and keep the flights as much of muchness as I can. So I'm going to use cruise control, send it out to around 250 meters. When it gets up to 250 meters, I'm going to initiate return to home, bring it back. Once it gets back to me, I'm going to raise it up to 100 meters. Once it gets up to that, initiate return to home again. And then I'm going to repeat that loop for each of the batteries and each of the scenarios with the guards on and guards off, just to see how much the difference is between the different variations. Okay, so you can see on the screen now that I've got it set up to the 1080p at 30 frames a second. And at the moment it's showing 99% battery, so let's get it up in the air. It stopped. Now I'm going to start record. Let's take it up to say 10 meters. And initiate cruise control. So I'm going to wait until it gets up to the 250 meters away. So stop it and initiate return to home.
Return to home.
As you can see, I got 89% battery left. I was stopped there for some reason. So I'll bring it down manually. And now I'm going to take it straight up on cruise control. No idea where he came up saying the ground's unsuitable for landing. That's at 15 meters high and there's no obstructions. Okay, so that's at 76%, so I'm going to bring it back again. See now if it does the same thing with the unsuitable ground. So now it's come back. So I'm going to stop it. And then I'm going to take it back up to around about 10 meters. And again, I'm going to send it forward and initiate cruise control. Take the gimbal up. Still being chased by gulls. So again now, it's coming up on the 250 mark. I'm going to stop it there and initiate cruise control again. And this time I've got 61%. See again now if I'm going to get that arrow coming up saying that the ground's unsuitable. So no issues this time. Right, so I'm going to stop it there. And then I'm just going to take it back up. So I'll take it back up on cruise control again, back up to the maximum, and then I'm going to do return to home again. Now, once it comes back, I can do exactly the same thing and send it out again for another 250 meters just to see how the battery goes. Okay, stop it there. Take it back up to 10 meters. And send it back out on cruise control. Bring the gimbal back up. So it's showing 39% now and been recording for 8 minutes 25 seconds. And again, we're coming up on the 250 mark. Let's stop it there. Initiate return to home.
Return to home.
And this time I've got 35%. So once again, I'll do the raise up to 100 meters until the return to home kicks in. Take it back up to 100 meters. Cruise control back in. Okay, so do the return to home again. And this is going to be the last for now where I'll try and send it out for 250 meters until the return to home kicks in. Stop it there. Take it back up to 10 minutes. Right, so I've got battery level low, so the aircraft's going to return. So it's stopped. And I'm going to let it hang in the air until it actually lands itself and then see what the record time was when it actually touches on the landing pad again. So that came in at a maximum of 12 minutes, 49 seconds. So that flight without the guards and doing the 1080p at 30 frames a second came in at 12 minutes 49 seconds. Now yesterday I did a couple of benchmark tests in the house. I just had the drone hover, so obviously there was no wind and the drone was moving, and using the same no guards and 1080p 30 frames a second, I managed to get 13 and a half minutes. So I've only lost 42 seconds actually out flying about. But bear in mind, today is a really calm day and it is practically no wind. And this is the point where I stop for 2 minutes and say, if you are finding it useful, if you could do the like, subscribe and the notification bell, that'd be greatly appreciated. There's also an option there for buy me a coffee, which means I won't have to bring a flask. I can actually use the coffee shop that's around the corner. But seriously, I'd like to thank the person this week who did do the buy me a coffee. Unfortunately, you didn't leave your name, but any funds I get from Buy Me a Coffee are going to go towards new equipment to help the channel grow. So thank you for that. Okay, and the next test is going to be exactly the same, but this time I'm just going to be switching it up to 4K at 60 frames a second, but still doing the same sort of routine of going out 250 meters, return to home, up, down, and then continue that until the battery runs out. Now, if you're using action cams, you do know that if you've got a higher frame rate, it does tend to use more battery power than you would using a low one. So I'm going to see if that has an effect now, because obviously we're using the maximum we can as opposed to the minimum on the last flight. Okay, so I'm back in 4K 60, to launch the drone. Got the home point updated, start recording, take it up to about 10 meters and initiate cruise control. So on the second flight, using the 4K 60 frames a second, it came in at 12 minutes, 12 seconds. So that's 37 seconds less using 4K as opposed to the 1080p. So there is a bit of a difference. When you think about it, okay, it's only 37 seconds, but considering the flight time you get on the DJI Neo 2, that is quite a difference overall. So the next test now is I'm going to repeat those, but this time I'm going to have the prop guards on and then compare them to the original figures. Okay, so let's take off. So again, this time now I got the guards on and I'm filming in 1080p at 30 frames a second. So I'm doing exactly the same as I said earlier, 250 meters out, back, 100 meters up, down, and then just keep repeating that until the battery goes and the drone's forced to land. So doing the test at 1080p 30 frames a second with the guards on came in at 11 minutes 19. So that's a full 1 minute 30 seconds shorter flight time than having the guards on, and it's also 53 seconds shorter than I was actually filming in 1080p. So that does go to show, again, having the guards on and filming in a lower frame rate will dramatically affect the flight time you're going to get. So this obviously now is going to be the final test. So I've got the guards on and I'm going out 4K at 60 frames a second. Now for some reason the camera just switched off then, so I switched it straight back on. So I'll have to work out the figures when I get home. Getting down 26%. Stopped recording again for some reason. Stop it there, do the descent. So with that test, there were a few problems. Twice it switched off the recording, so I'm going to have to look at the actual length of the recordings I've got and then work out a rough time, and then I'll do that in a moment. I also had a problem again, this time with it braking. It was for some reason detecting there's something there, even though obviously there was nothing around it, and it refused to move. So there must be some sort of glitch as well going on with the software that I wasn't aware of. If you've got any similar problems, let me know in the comments below. Okay, so I crunched the numbers on the last flight and that came in at 11 minutes 20 seconds. So compared to the first flight, I've actually lost 1 minute and 29 seconds using the guards and the 4K at 60 frames a second as opposed to the 1080p at 30 frames a second. So considering the flight time with the DJI Neo 2 is only around about say 11 to 12 minutes anyway in ideal conditions, you are losing round about 10, maybe 15% by having the guards on, as well as using a higher frame rate as opposed to the lowest one that the DJI Neo 2 offers. Bear in mind as well, if you are flying in less than perfect conditions, so you've got higher winds, then that flight time is going to be reduced even further. So ultimately, it boils down to whether or not you want to have more flight time or whether or not you want to have more safety and a better quality image. For me personally, I'd rather have the safety and the better quality image and spend an extra few pounds on buying a spare battery that I can take with me just to make up that time. Okay, so that's the end of the video. If you did find it useful, if you could do the like, subscribe and the notification bell, that would be greatly appreciated. And as I said earlier, there's the option there for buy me a coffee, and that would be greatly appreciated too. If you got any questions in relation to the DJI Neo, the Neo 2, the Mini 4 Pro, the Mini 5 Pro, or the Hover X1 Pro, Pro Max, also let me know in the comments below, or anything to do with any action cams. Also, if you did have similar issues to me today in relation to the landing or the braking, could you let me know as well, see if we can find out exactly what's going on with that. And if there's anything else you want to see, let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you again next time. So thanks very much, and bye.